Hello and welcome to the Eating Disorder Therapist podcast. I'm Harriet Frew, eating disorder therapist, here to support you in overcoming disordered eating and finding peace with food. So thank you so much for listening today. Now today I'm going to talk more about the psychology of eating disorders, and the title of this week's podcast episode is It's Not About Food, It's About Feelings. And this quote is taken from BEAT, the National Association for Eating Disorders in the UK. So that's a sort of strap line which they often use, which I think is so relevant. So first I'm going to dive into a little case study to illustrate someone's made up personal story, but drawing on many of my clients' experiences. Okay, so everything's been so difficult this week. I feel so out of control with my eating. So this is my made up client, Katie. I listen to her words and I empathise. It's not unusual for eating symptoms to be activated tenfold when a client begins to peel back the layers of the psychological onion and to explore what's underneath. Katie has bulimia and has struggled for 9 lengthy years. It has impacted her life in her teens and 20s in profound and destructive ways. Although not many people in Katie's life know this. She presents to the world as coping, pleasing, compliant and put together. She doesn't look as if she has an eating disorder, but most eating disorders don't have a look. The emaciated thin stereotype is deeply limiting, and most sufferers appear on the outside to be healthy, and only 85% of people with eating disorders are underweight. So by day, Katie is stuck in restrictive starvation, and work colleagues would describe her as a clean eater or extremely self-disciplined, because our cultural understanding of eating disorders remains warped. Many of my clients receive the greatest body image validation when in the depths of eating struggles. But behind closed doors, Katie's food world has stark contrast. Eating cakes, chocolate, pizza, rounds of toast slathered with butter, endless bowls of cereal, and anything and everything that is normally banned and forbidden. The binging and subsequent purging episodes feel wildly out of control, and the complete opposite from the daily perfection and orderliness in which Katie lives her visible to others life. All repressed emotions, societal conditioning and inner anxiety is set free in the ritualistic bulimic behaviours, and temporarily Katie finds relief before the wave of self-loathing and shame descends. Katie is confused by her symptoms. She feels that she has no willpower and has a monster appetite like no other human. But an eating disorder is not just about food, although the sufferer may feel dominated by food thoughts 24/7. It's a coping strategy to deal with unconscious pain. It's a symptom of having to push things down, to conform, to fit in and be accepted, and it comes at enormous cost to the self. An exploration of Katie's history, and you can gain some insight and understanding into her story. She was a tall 12-year-old and always felt bigger than her peers, who she described as small and dainty. Back then, she had a deep discomfort with her body and would often hide in baggy clothes. Katie's eating disorder started at 15 years old during chaos and uncertainty at home. She lost her dearly beloved grandmother, who had been a cherished source of love, stability and immense support for her growing up. This was an excruciatingly painful grief to bear, to lose someone who had known and seen her so fully. Her grandmother had delighted and encouraged Katie and always offered unconditional, incredible warmth and acceptance. Katie's mum was racked with grief and deeply struggled in the aftermath of the bereavement with little emotional support. Katie's dad was buried in work commitments and managing his own stressors. Her mum leant heavily on her and she bravely took on the baton of caring. She looked after her younger siblings and her own teenage carefree days were put aside. Katie coped by channeling energy into schoolwork with laser focus. This brought a sense of accomplishment and something solid and safe in the uncertainty. And she also took comfort in focusing on food. Little rituals began to take place with weighing, prepping, measuring. These rituals offered safety and reassurance when the world did not feel safe at all. And the honeymoon of restriction with precise food control was short-lived. And with the mounting pressure of academic work and friendship dramas, within several months the gnawing hunger and growing emotional confusion became unbearable and impossible to ignore. Katie fell quickly and intensely into bulimia. Initially, it being a one-off episode, but soon permeating into every minute of every day, swallowing up her life with a vengeance. So if you're struggling with an eating disorder, you may relate to some of Katie's experiences, although your story will be understandably different and very personal to you. and your symptoms will also differ. You might experience over-exercise, chewing and spitting, laxative use, emotional eating, or other behaviours around controlling weight and shape. It's understandable that you may feel ambivalent about change, as the eating disorder is a life raft which has kept you safe through turbulent times. One of the first steps towards recovery can be an exploration of your story and working on motivation for change. If it feels too much to wade into your story right now, you might also want to think about having support in therapy. But wherever you are on your journey, please know that recovery is possible for you. So let's dive into ways that we can understand the psychology of an eating disorder and begin to make sense of it. So the first bit is your story. So appreciate that although it may not be obvious to you, your difficulties with food will run deeper than the obvious surface level concerns. So look back at your early life and experiences. Which events have particularly shaped your life? Which relationships have been important or impactful? Have you experienced a loss, bullying, adversity, or trauma? So notice what comes up for you and offer yourself deep compassion and kindness as you view your childhood experiences through your adult perspective. Number 2, working on motivation. So if you have an eating disorder, you're likely to be immensely ambivalent about change. As although the eating disorder is a destructive force weaving through your life like poison ivy and disrupting and tangling your world into one gigantic mess, it also has value to you. It helps, or at least it helped you initially, to cope when life was scary or difficult. Eating disorder behaviours become a welcome and familiar life raft to cling to in tumultuous times. And an eating disorder can offer glimmers of self-worth and achievement when other life areas aren't going so well. And these illnesses can be described as egosyntonic in nature due to this. So you're getting something from it, although you're also getting a lot of costs too. So accept that ambivalence around recovery change is normal. Part of you will not want to let go of the eating disorder as it has helped you survive through challenging times. It may be intertwined with your identity and daily life structure. You may feel terrified to let go. Again, be compassionate and understanding of yourself, because in time, you can learn to cope in healthier and more soul-nourishing ways, and realise that alternative ways to managing do exist, even if you don't know them yet. By processing the positives and negatives of the coping strategy, this opens space for reflection and new perspectives. So reflect on the pros and the cons of your eating disorder, understanding your eating disorder as a beloved friend and a cruel enemy. So how has it helped you cope? How is it holding you back? How is it impacting your daily life? Where will you be in 2 or 5 years if you continue with this way of coping? It's often helpful to do this zoom out. An understanding about ambivalence is also helpful for carers, parents, loved ones, and therapists to support you better. Someone telling you to let go of your eating disorder, telling you in that direct way will likely cause you to cling tightly to it and push back with defiance. Instead, if someone is coming alongside you and empathizing with the egosyntonic nature of the illness, this initiates opportunity for understanding and communication. So if you have carers in your life, help them to understand that them coming alongside you can be incredibly beneficial. And if you're a carer listening, I'd really recommend that you search out the new Maudsley Animal Model. That gives some great tips for how to support someone who's struggling with an eating disorder. Number 3, emotional coping. If you have an eating disorder, your emotions will be buried under coping behaviours. The behaviours will rule your life and give you no time for inner reflection or self-connection. And you may in part welcome this, because engaging with some feelings can be excruciatingly painful. Emotions get buried in a metaphorical box with an ironclad lid. They may explode occasionally from the box, like an erupting volcano, when the box is simply too full and bursting over. But this explosion of grief or anger or shame is so intensely volatile for your psyche that reinforces your desire to ram the box shut even more tightly and to continue to block and numb. So emotional burying is not usually a conscious thought out strategy. It just happens over time. You start restricting or binging on food and you feel safer, soothed and protected. The difficult feelings are temporarily gone and starvation is effectively distracting. You'll feel tired and compromised physically You will lack concentration and your memory will suffer. You will have low mood and a decreased resilience to engage in life. But when restriction is going well, you might feel a temporary surge of control, mastery, and superhumanness. That's until you don't stick vehemently to your goals and you feel a deep sense of misery, shame, and unworthiness. Cutting off from your emotions through eating disorder behaviours places you in a shielded bubble where you detach from life. This is protective, but it is also life-sapping. When you recover, you may experience a colossal grief for time lost in the bubble and life disconnection. It's not your fault if you're using food and body to deal with pain, though. It's simply a sign that your emotions were too big and scary at the onset of the eating disorder and you felt under-resourced to manage. Once you begin to acknowledge this in the safety of therapy or in close and trusted relationships, you can begin to tentatively access your emotional world and heal. And this can be done carefully, piece by piece, at a pace that feels manageable rather than throwing the box fully open in one go. Your feelings will be messy and overwhelming at first. You might have some ginormous meltdowns. It's important to create safety and grounding to support you through. It's part of the process. Through talking, therapy, somatic work, journaling, meditation, healthy movement, as examples, you can feel and release your emotions. And in this process, you get far more access to more peace and joy, as when you numb emotions, you lose the positive ones too. Number 4, not feeling good enough. I don't think I've ever met a person with an eating disorder who genuinely feels good enough. They may possess a performative good enough presentation to the world, but this is just a glossy overcoat, pasting over a fragile interior. Once you get beneath the surface layers, feelings of unworthiness are rampantly dominant. So you may have thoughts like, I've always felt different from other people. I didn't fit in at school. I was the odd one out in my family. I feel bad inside. I'm undeserving of good things. I'm not likable or lovable. Many factors may contribute to this feeling, including your gender, race, class, appearance, weight, academic ability, disability, and more. Now, when you don't feel good enough, you will strive to gain acceptance from others and will follow strategies to try and feel a bit better. This can manifest itself in multiple ways, and particularly in our toxic culture that glamorises thinness and muscularity, it can be a seductive route to change your body as the magic passport to worthiness. Dieting and changing body composition can feel right and honourable, and it will likely offer a glimmer of value when your self-esteem is on the floor. Additionally, you may become adept at being the perfect pleaser, as the happy and harmonious person that doesn't make a fuss and keeps their own emotions under wraps, so not to rock the boat or experience any tension. Now, this works short term for temporary conditional acceptance. However, it becomes devastating to the human psyche as your own voice is lost and your thoughts and feelings become buried. You become the conditional version of yourself. People then expect this conditional side of you, and the cycle tightly perpetuates itself. And this can lead to an overwhelming loneliness and disconnection with the self. And it can result in increasing levels of shame. Your genuine needs are hidden, but you don't feel that you have permission to have them anyway. Now, you are not broken or flawed. You have simply lost yourself along the way. Or maybe you've never had the safety of secure relationships to find yourself in the first place. So connecting with yourself and feeling enough is a gradual and deliberate process. It requires a slowing down from the busy hamster wheel of life. It involves a reconnection with your inner wisdom, thoughts, feeling, and intuition. It requires the safety and support of trusted relationships, and it's an incremental building of self-trust over time. So some final thoughts to take away. Ultimately, an eating disorder is a coping strategy, albeit a maladaptive one. You didn't choose it, and it's often unconscious. You have likely used it to survive life stressors, and has then become an entrenched habit and a life raft which is challenging to disconnect from. However, change is always possible. You can learn new and healthy ways of coping, which are so much more life-giving than the eating disorder. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. Don't be afraid to reach out for help and get support. Okay, thank you so much for listening today. Appreciate you being here. If you're not following me already on Instagram, do seek me out, the Eating Disorder Therapist _. And for further support with your relationship with food, do go to the eatingdisordertherapist.co.uk. If you enjoy this podcast, I would be so grateful if you follow, rate and review, as it helps it reach so many more listeners. And if you want to receive written articles of the podcast to your inbox, please subscribe to my Substack. The link is in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to sharing another podcast episode with you very soon.